This year, we were spending Thanksgiving with my wife's family. For the last 18 years, it was always at our house, but now that the boys were gone, things changed. Josh went to Alabama, and Jordan picked Auburn. I think that they did that on purpose just so that there would always be an ongoing family conflict. It was sort of traditional and always good fun. I worked as an insurance claims adjuster for the last 15 years, and I absolutely hated it. I always wanted to do something outdoors and of a manual nature. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew I didn't want to work behind a desk anymore. My family situation made me a slave to my job. Connie had never worked. Over the last few years, the boys have been super active in sports and other activities. I became the involved parent, and Connie was more laid back but supportive. As I spend more time with the boys, she spends more time with her parents. Connie's parents were in their late 60s. They were still in good health but starting to feel the stress of aging. Every couple of years, they would spend Thanksgiving at our place, but we had never gone to theirs. It was anticipated to be a very low-key, laid-back weekend. The weather was fine, so the 2-hour drive went pretty well. Connie's dad and I enjoyed getting caught up while Connie and her mom got busy getting ready for the next day's meal. It was just the four of us, and everything went quite well. The food was delicious, and the company was pleasant. Frank, Connie's dad, and I were looking forward to a long afternoon of football and cold beer. Connie's mom just wanted to be left alone with her new Patterson novel. "John, if it's okay with you, I am going to go spend the afternoon with Harriet Miller from high school. I haven't seen her for over 10 years. Are you and Dad going to be okay?" "We'll be fine, honey. Stay as long as you'd like, but lay off of the spirits." I smiled as I waved her out the door. Connie's mother, Teresa, was just finishing the cleanup, as I was getting a couple of fresh long necks for me and Frank. "Where did Connie run off to John?" "I think she said that she was going to go see an old friend, Harriet Miller, I believe." "That's nice. She will probably be there most of the afternoon." She gave me a weird smile. "She said she would be back later this evening," I answered. It was a slow, quiet afternoon. Teresa was comfortable with her book in the living room, and Frank and I were trying to get enthused about the football games, but not having too much luck. "John, would you mind getting a couple of black and tans out of the frig? I think that we need to talk a bit." When I got back, Frank had just closed the door between the den and the living room. "What is on your mind, Frank?" I questioned. "First of all, I think you should know that Harriet Miller died from colon cancer about 6 months ago. I have no idea why Connie said that she was going to see her. She could have just as easy picked a name of someone that wasn't dead." I didn't respond to what he said. "I am not sure, but I think that it is an in-joke between Connie and her mother. They seem to have these little secrets between them that I am not privy to." "What you are saying is that something fishy is going on that I don't know about?" I questioned. "Exactly." I got 2 more long necks. "It has been going on for the last 5 years or so. That is why Connie has been coming to see us so often." "What exactly are you trying to say?" "I am a bit confused," I asked. "When Connie comes to visit us lately, she hasn't been staying here. I don't know where she goes, but I have been very specifically told to keep my nose out of it." "You are saying that Connie is doing something that she should not be doing, and her mother is helping her do it?" I questioned. "I knew that you were a smart fellow," he answered. I finished my beer, and we both started faking interest in the ball game. We didn't talk about it anymore. As time went on, Frank started nodding off, and I caught myself thinking about what my wife was really up to. I got out of my cell and started to play around. Connie had turned off her Find a Phone app. I fiddled around with it a bit, but did not have any results. I didn't try and call her, but I assumed that her phone was still on and active. I wondered how those police shows were always able to locate a cell phone, and I couldn't. I made a fresh pot of coffee. Frank fell asleep on his recliner. Teresa put a cover over him as she went up to bed. Connie finally got home. So how was Harriet? I tried to say it with a straight face. She was fine. They redecorated the whole house now that their kids are gone. It looked nice. The problem is that I drank a little too much wine. I shouldn't have driven home. I didn't reply. John, I am really tired. I am going to catch a quick shower and hit the sack. We'll talk in the morning, okay? I filled the thermos with fresh coffee. I also stuck Connie's cell phone in my pocket. As I walked out the door, I heard Frank whisper, "Go get him, Tiger." I didn't know what he meant, but it did bring a smile to my face. There was no real plan, so I just sat, waiting for the heater to warm up. I finally decided to try and use the GPS system in the car. For what it cost, I was hoping to get something out of it other than finding the nearest McDonald's. I went to the history section and selected bead crumbs. Yes, it was all there. I had a nice little line of red dots showing me everywhere my loving wife had been that afternoon. I had no idea where Harriet lived, but it didn't matter. All I had to do was follow the yellow brick road. Red dot road. 15 minutes later, I was in a modest little subdivision in front of a small brick home with a one-car garage. This had to be the place because the dots turned around here and started going back. I pulled out my phone and went to Google Maps. It took a bit of manipulating, but in a few minutes, I knew that I was directly in front of 321 David Drive. If I had known what I was doing, I could have figured everything else out in a matter of minutes. I didn't know what I was doing, but I did stumble through it and found out that the house was owned by Henry Parker. Henry Parker was Connie's high school boyfriend, and if I remember correctly, had even taken her to the senior prom. So she visited an old boyfriend and spent some time with him. That doesn't necessarily mean that they spent the afternoon actively engaged in intimacy. They might have, but I had no proof. All I had was enough to cause a bit of grief in my marriage. I hated halfway crap. I was going to just go back to the house, but at the last minute, I decided to continue backtracking the breadcrumbs. It turned out to be a good decision. It seems that Connie did not go directly to Henry's house. She stopped by a local CVS drugstore that was on the way. So, what could I do with this information? I turned on the interior light in the car and searched around, looking for an empty paper bag or a receipt. I found nothing. Connie was a creature of habit, of course. She never paid cash. She charged everything. I turned on her phone and hit the MasterCard icon. It worked just like it was supposed to. Purchase history took me right to the Lakeshore CVS, and I immediately had a copy of the purchase that was made today at 3:45 p.m. My loving wife had bought a Trojan Pleasure Pack for $7.89 and a tube of KY jelly for $10.77. There were 12 condoms in that package. I hope she got her money's worth. Now I had enough information. I could go home, but I had one more thing to do. First, I saved a copy of the CVS receipt as a JPG. Then I went to the phone settings. I was not really good at this type of thing, but I kept at it until I prevailed. I saved the picture of the receipt as wallpaper. Then I made it the default for her phone. Now, whenever she opens her phone, it will be the first thing to come up. I am sure she will have no trouble getting rid of it, but not before she realizes that I am fully aware of what she did. I also sent myself a copy of that picture. 20 minutes later, I was back at the house. Frank was still sleeping on his recliner. I assumed that Teresa was upstairs in bed and my loving wife was fast asleep in the guest room. I quietly gathered up all of my things and moved downstairs. I put Connie's cell phone on the kitchen table with my wedding ring. There was no note. I didn't feel that it was necessary. I was ready to walk out the door when I saw my father-in-law in the doorway. "How did it go, John?" he asked. "Just as you expected." He smiled and gave me a small wave. 5 hours later, I was home. 5 hours after that, I was on my way to Florida. No more crappy job, no more crappy weather, and no more cheating wife. I was tempted to stop and see the boys, but decided not to. For some strange reason, I ended up in Baldwin County, Alabama, instead of Florida. It seems as if there are hundreds of deserted mobile homes located in developments around the area. Retirees buy the homes and then die. Their heirs are then stuck with having to continue paying lot and community fees until the units can be sold. Sometimes, this takes years, so there were many rentals available. Within a week, I had a new address, a new driver's license, and a new bank account. All my Pennsylvania accounts were closed out. After filing a declaration of domicile, I contacted Alabama and Auburn to change the status of the boys to residents. I transferred all of the money from all of the accounts and even the boys' college funds. Because I am a good guy, I paid off all of the credit cards before closing them. Connie still had her Kohl's card. I canceled the insurance on the house and on Connie's car. The car was in her name, as was her cell phone. I was going to cancel the utilities, but changed my mind at the last minute. I wasn't hiding, but I was not letting anyone know where I was. I won't bore you with all of the other mundane actions that were required. You already heard that story 100 times. I did call each of the boys and explained the situation as well as I could without sounding like an asshole. They were not happy and did not understand, but seemed to accept it. I got a job at the Escambia Boat Works, scraping boat hulls. They were not interested in paying me under the table for insurance reasons, so I ended up having to go the above-board route. It didn't matter since I didn't care if anyone found me. I didn't break any laws. I got a $10 a month membership at the closest Planet Fitness. I had no desire to get into an exercise regimen, but I did need a good place to shower after work. The bathroom facilities at the rental trailer were barely adequate. After showering, I usually ate out or picked up something to go. The routine smoothed out quickly, and I was a happy camper. Frank, it's me, John. Just thought that I would check in and see how things were going. Hey, Guy. Good to hear from you. How long has it been now? Almost 4 months, he asked. Just about. I've been busy just getting settled. I had my phone turned off almost the whole time. I only turn it on when I need to use it, mostly to order takeout. So what the hell are you doing? He asked. I rented a small mobile home and got a job working at one of the local boat yards. I lost almost 20 pounds already and I am not even dieting. The boys are coming down for spring break. I am looking forward to seeing them, but not to having to explain why I left. We'll see how it goes. Well, I am glad to hear things are going well for you. Everything went to hell here. Did your wife contact you? He questioned. Frank, I have not heard a word. Not one message popped up on my phone. I was actually expecting to be inundated with stupid calls, but I did not get one. The only messages I got were spam calls. What the hell is going on? I could hear Frank laughing on the other end. John, you would not believe it. Connie and her mother actually celebrated for a whole week after you left. The first thing that Teresa did was take your wedding picture off of the mantle and put up an old picture of Connie and Henry going to the prom. I didn't even know that she kept that picture. Well, I expected some kind of fallout, but not that. I guess everyone is happy now? I asked. Well, not really. The chickens did come home to roost, so to say, when Connie returned back home. She could not even pay the utility bills, let alone the mortgage. Things went to hell pretty fast. The house will be going back to the bank next month. She still owes the back utility bills. Hell, she can't even pay her Kohl's bill. How is she living? I questioned. She was going to move in with us, but at the last minute she decided to move in with Henry. I was relieved at that. She is angry that you closed out all of the bank accounts, but not enough to contact you about it. Henry seems more than willing to support her. Frank and I chatted for a few more minutes. I promised to call again after the boys went back to school. I had mixed emotions about the whole thing. On the one hand, I was happy that I got away clean, but on the other hand, I was a bit upset that there was absolutely no remorse. I guess I didn't do it right. The boys stayed for a week, but to be honest, they spent most of the time in Gulf Shores or Panama City Beach. They refused to get into any discussion about the marriage. They said that Connie called each of them one time, said that I left, and gave no further explanation. They didn't hear from her again. They were happy to hear that I would still be able to take care of their tuition. I told them to get Alabama driver's licenses and use my address. I had no social life. I did not go to bars. All the waitresses at the restaurants I frequented were either too young, too old, or too desperate. I did start working out a bit at the fitness center, just because I was bored and looking for something to do. It was nothing as you read about in the erotic stories, however. Of course, there was not much going on where I lived either. I think 90% of my neighbors were on Social Security. I became addicted to YouTube videos. 2 years passed. Nobody ever knocks on my door, especially on Sunday morning. I finally decided I had to find out who it was, just to shut them up. It was Frank. "Damn, Frank, how the hell did you find me?" I asked. "I stopped on the way down and saw Jordan. He gave me directions. I couldn't find Josh. You got a cold beer for a weary traveler?" "It's 6 in the morning. Wouldn't you rather have coffee?" I asked. "Got some?" he answered. I did have enough stuff on hand to throw together a pretty good breakfast. One of my many vices. We chatted and ate for a while until I asked the big question. "What the hell are you doing here?" I got in a little trouble and felt that it was time to leave the Keystone State. I didn't respond. Henry leaned back a bit in his chair and tried to get comfortable. Connie and Henry got married Saturday morning. I didn't even know that I was divorced. That's interesting. But it doesn't seem like a reason to leave. While everybody was at the church, I went over and burned down Henry's house. Now that seems very interesting. "How did that go over?" I asked. "I don't know. I didn't see them after that," he replied. "Well, since you are here, I guess they will just have to move in with Teresa now?" "Not likely," I gave him an inquisitive look. "I burned down my own house just before I left," Frank answered. And then another surprise. Josh and Jordan showed up. What did I do to deserve this visit? Frank and I helped them bring their bags in. Actually, we were trying to figure out where Grandpop disappeared to. This was my best guess. Josh figured that he would go to Mexico. "I take it that you both went to the wedding?" I asked. "Yeah, it was a blast. Not what we expected by a long shot." Jordan looked like he was trying to keep from laughing. Frank nudged me with his elbow. "John, I think your boys are playing us." I got 4 long necks out of the fridge. "So, how do you like your new stepdad?" That got both of them snickering. "What the hell is so funny?" I asked. "They never married, Dad. In the middle of the ceremony, somebody piped up and said that Henry's house was on fire. Everything stopped as he rushed out to see what was going on. By the time things settled down, we found out that Grandmom and Grandpop's house was also on fire. Mom kept trying to get Henry to finish the ceremony, but he finally got angry, yelled that the wedding was off, and stormed out. We had no place to stay, so we drove right down here." "So they never got married?" I asked. "Nope." Josh and Jordan stayed a few days and then went back to school. A few people showed up making inquiries about Frank, but I was able to misdirect them to Ocala. After a few weeks, they stopped coming around. Frank got a job with Home Depot, and life got a whole lot more interesting. He was a bit more gregarious than I was, so in a short period of time, I actually started to get a social life of such. All of a sudden, we were going to cook out, barbecues, and birthday parties. We even got invited to a funeral and a couple of weddings. That is where I met Argie Sue Baker. Argie was a divorcee who worked in the garden department at Home Depot with Frank. After running into her several times at different events, we sort of became a couple. One thing led to another, and 6 months late, Argie moved into the trailer with me after Frank moved out. He found a rich widow who owned a condo in Orange Beach. Argie and I didn't get married, but we did buy the trailer together. She talked me into quitting the marina job, and now we are both working at Home Depot. Ain't love great? And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Enjoy the show, darling. I placed the black envelope on the coffee table, right between the half-empty wine glasses and scattered poker chips. The laughter died instantly. 14 pairs of eyes fixed on me, some wide with shock, others narrowed in confusion, and one pair, my wife's, darkening with dawning horror. Tessa's face drained of color as she rose from the lap of a man I recognized as her colleague, Jason. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. The room smelled of wine, perfume, and secrets, the same cologne I'd been noticing on our sheets for months. "Mark," she finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're supposed to be at work." I didn't answer. There was no need. I simply nodded toward the envelope and walked out, closing our front door with a soft click behind me. No shouting, no scene, just surgical precision, the same way I handled trauma in the ER. My name is Mark Patterson. I'm 38 years old, an emergency room nurse at Mercy General. I've spent 12 years stabilizing car crash victims, pumping overdosed teenagers' stomachs, and holding the hands of the dying when their families couldn't make it in time. I know how to stay calm when everything is falling apart. I know how to function while bleeding inside. Tonight, I finally used those skills at home. 3 months ago, I wasn't looking for evidence. I was just tired. Bone-deep, mind-numbing exhaustion after a 16-hour shift that had included a 5-car pileup on the interstate. 3 casualties, 1 DOA. I'd had blood on my scrubs, in my hair, under my fingernails. All I wanted was shower and sleep. Instead, I found messages on Tessa's unlocked phone when it buzzed on our kitchen counter. I wasn't snooping. I was going to bring it upstairs to her. But the preview notification caught my eye. From Jason. "Still taste you on my lips. Can't wait till Nurse Boy pulls another double." I stood there for what felt like hours, my body completely still while my world tilted sideways. I scrolled up. More messages, pictures, videos, a 6-month history of betrayal, right there in my hands. Upstairs, I could hear Tessa humming in the shower. The same shower we'd remodeled together last year, with the rainfall showerhead she'd wanted and the bench seat I'd installed by hand. The same shower where, apparently, she'd taken explicit photos to send to her lover while I worked overtime to pay for our mortgage. I placed the phone back exactly as I'd found it and went to the guest bedroom. I didn't confront her, not then, because something cold and clear crystallized inside me. If I was going to lose everything, I'd do it on my terms. It took me 2 weeks to process what was happening. I thought about the signs I'd missed, or perhaps ignored. Tessa's wine nights that left our house smelling like strangers. The way she'd stopped asking about my day. How she'd been too tired or not in the mood for months, yet somehow always looked radiant, perfumed, and eager on evenings when I was scheduled to work. "You're never home anyway," she'd complained last month when I asked why she'd spent $400 on new lingerie I'd never seen her wear. "Why not let me have some fun?" Fun, dot. That's what she called it. The breaking point came when I finished a shift early and overheard her on the phone in our bedroom. "He's so exhausted I could throw a threesome in our bed and he'd just think it was a dream," she giggled to someone. "No, seriously, Mark's completely oblivious. It's almost sad." I stood in the hallway, my hospital bag still slung over my shoulder, as she continued. "Anyway, Jason's bringing that hot resident from cardiology next weekend. Mark's pulling a double shift Saturday, so we'll have the whole house. Bring that bottle of tequila you promised." That night, as Tessa slept beside me, I made a decision. I wouldn't become the raging, betrayed husband. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of my pain. Instead, I would become something much more dangerous. Patient. The first surveillance camera went into the air vent above our bed. The second, behind the decorative mirror in the guest bathroom. 3 more throughout the house. Living room, kitchen, back patio. Small, wireless, motion-activated, and feeding into encrypted cloud storage only I could access. The audio recorders were even smaller, one in the potted fern by the couch, another in the decorative bowl on the dining table, a third attached to the underside of her vanity. I spent $2,800 on the equipment. Money well spent. I told Tessa I was picking up extra shifts because a colleague needed time off for a family emergency. In reality, I spent those hours in a coffee shop 6 blocks away, watching the live stream from our home, cataloging every betrayal, every lie, every mockery of our 11-year marriage. The first weekend yielded exactly what I expected. Jason arrived with wine and wandering hands. They didn't even make it upstairs before clothes started coming off. On our couch, where we'd watched movies together, where I'd held her during her father's funeral. I watched, not with rage, but with clinical detachment. Each kiss, each moan, each disrespectful comment about nurse boy was evidence. Ammunition. I documented everything. Timestamps, identities of visitors, conversations. God, doesn't Mark ever notice these weekends? One of her friends asked during a particularly crowded gathering. Tessa laughed, refilling wine glasses. Mark notices about as much as a houseplant. He works so much that when he's home, he's practically comatose. It's the perfect arrangement. Aren't you worried, though? Another woman, I recognized her as Jamie from Tessa's office, looked concerned. What if he finds out? What's he going to do? Tessa shrugged. Cry about it? Mark's too nice for his own good. Besides, the house is in both our names, and California's a community property state. Worst case scenario, I get half of everything in maintenance payments. I've been putting money aside. That was news to me. I checked our accounts that night and discovered she'd been siphoning funds into a private account for months, nearly $40,000 from our joint savings. Money I'd earned during overnight shifts and holiday rotations. Money meant for our future. The next day, I consulted a divorce attorney. Sharon Lichtman was recommended by a colleague who'd gone through a similar situation. She was expensive, ruthless, and worth every penny. Infidelity alone won't help much in California, she explained. But financial infidelity, hiding assets, unauthorized withdrawals from joint accounts, that's different. And if you can prove she's using your marital home to conduct these affairs while you're working to support the household, we can make a case for spousal misconduct. Add the surveillance evidence. Is that legal? I interrupted. Sharon pursed her lips. You live in the home. You installed devices in common areas. There's no expectation of privacy in your living room or kitchen. The bedroom is trickier, but we can argue you had reasonable suspicion of misconduct in your own marital bed. The bigger question is, do you want to play nice, or do you want to win? I thought about Tessa laughing with her lover about my obliviousness, about the money she'd stolen, about 11 years of my life. I want to win, I said quietly. 5 years ago, Tessa and I took a trip to Maui for our anniversary. We hiked to a waterfall, and I remember how she looked standing under it, laughing, radiant, alive. She'd grabbed my hands and pulled me under the cascading water with her. This is how I want to feel forever, she'd whispered against my lips. Like everything in the world is beautiful and possible. I proposed the next day on a sunset cruise. She cried when I gave her the ring. I thought they were tears of joy. Now I wonder if she was already weighing its resale value. There were other memories, too. Building our first apartment's IKEA furniture together, nursing each other through food poisoning after a questionable food truck experience, the way she'd bring me coffee during my study sessions when I was getting my BSN degree. Had it all been a performance? Or had something changed along the way? I found myself analyzing our relationship like a patient chart, looking for the moment the vital signs began to fail. Maybe it was 3 years ago, when I took the night shift permanently for the pay differential. Maybe it was when she got promoted at her PR firm and suddenly had a new circle of friends, wealthier, sleeker, impressed by status and hungry for drama. Or maybe it was simpler than that. Maybe Tessa just got bored and I was too exhausted to notice. Either way, I couldn't afford to dwell on the past. I had preparations to make. Over the next 2 months, I moved methodically. First, I documented the missing money and opened new accounts at a different bank. Then I gradually moved my direct deposits and the remaining joint funds, leaving just enough to avoid suspicion. I changed my beneficiary information on my life insurance and 401k. I found a furnished condo across town and signed a 6-month lease, paying in advance. I had our household valuables, those with sentimental value to me, quietly appraised and photographed for the divorce proceedings. I backed up all the surveillance footage to multiple secure locations, and I watched as Tessa's betrayal escalated. What had started as weekend trysts with Jason evolved into something more brazen. She began using our home for larger gatherings, parties while I worked night shifts, sometimes with 4 or 5 couples, drinking, using recreational drugs, and eventually pairing off in various rooms of our house. And Tessa was the ringleader. "Mark's so sweet," she told a newcomer at one of these events, her words slightly slurred. "He has no idea how to handle a woman like me. Too gentle, too boring. But he makes good money and he's never home to bother me, so it works out." The newcomer, a man with a wedding ring of his own, laughed. "And he never suspects?" "Mark?" Tessa snorted. "He's practically a robot. All he cares about is his patients and his sleep schedule. I could leave lipstick on his collar and he'd just think it was blood from the hospital." They all laughed, all except Jamie, who looked increasingly uncomfortable as the weeks went on. Then I discovered something worse. On a Tuesday afternoon, while Tessa thought I was sleeping between shifts, she brought Jason to our house. They went into my home office where I kept important documents. "Are you sure about this?" Jason asked as Tessa rummaged through my files. "Relax. Mark never checks these. I've been signing his name on credit applications for years," Tessa replied, pulling out our property deed. "We just need to get this refinanced before I file for divorce. The house has appreciated almost $200,000 since we bought it. We can use the equity to get that place in Palm Springs we talked about." "What about the mortgage payments?" Jason sounded nervous. "Mark will have to keep making them until the divorce is final. By then, we'll have the cash in hand." She kissed him. "Trust me, I've got it all planned out." That night, I provided Sharon with the new footage. She smiled grimly. Forgery, attempted fraud, conspiracy. "Now we're talking," she said, making notes. "When do you want to execute?" I checked my calendar. "I have a 16-hour shift scheduled for the 28th. She's already planning another gathering. That's when we do it." The day arrived with a strange sense of calm. I packed a bag as if leaving for work, kissed an unconcerned Tessa goodbye, and drove to the hospital. I clocked in, explained to my supervisor that a family emergency had come up, and used a personal day. She was sympathetic. I'd never taken time off without good reason before. I spent the day at Sharon's office, finalizing paperwork and reviewing our strategy. At 9:30 p.m., I drove home and parked a block away. Through my phone, I watched Tessa's party reach full swing. 12 people, including Jason and several other regular visitors. Music, dancing, cocaine on my coffee table. At 10:15 p.m., I texted Jamie. "I know what's happening at my house. I'm coming home. You might want to leave." 3 minutes later, Jamie made an excuse and left the party. Good for her. She was the only one who'd shown any hesitation about the whole situation. The rest deserved what was coming. At 10:30 p.m., I walked into my own home without knocking. The shock on their faces was immediate. Several people I barely recognized froze mid-conversation. One couple scrambled to adjust clothing. Jason's arm, which had been around Tessa's waist, dropped to his side. Tessa recovered first, plastering on a smile. "Mark, you're home early. We're just having a little get-together with—" I placed the black envelope on the table and said the only 4 words I'd planned. "Enjoy the show, darling." Then I left. In the envelope, dozens of high-resolution screenshots from my surveillance footage. Tessa and Jason in our bed. Tessa discussing how to defraud me with the house refinancing. Tessa mocking me to her friends. Tessa with the various men she'd brought into our home. Tessa snorting cocaine off our wedding photo album. And a note that simply read, "The rest goes to your boss, your parents, and your church tomorrow, unless you're out of the house by noon. The divorce papers are being served in the morning. I drove to my new condo and slept better than I had in years." The fallout was swift and comprehensive. Tessa called 17 times that night. I didn't answer. Her texts ranged from raging, "You fucking spied on me?" to desperate, "We need to talk, I can explain everything," to threatening, "You can't prove anything, I'll tell everyone you abused me." I forwarded the threats to Sharon, who added them to our file. The divorce papers were served at 8 a.m. by a process server who reported that Tessa looked like she hadn't slept and might be under the influence. Included was a restraining order preventing her from accessing our joint assets or entering the property after noon, based on evidence of financial fraud and her documented threats. By 11:30 a.m., according to my remaining cameras, Tessa was frantically packing suitcases, alternating between crying and screaming at Jason on the phone. He wasn't answering either. At 11:58, she left with 3 suitcases and a box of personal items, slamming the door behind her. I had the locks changed at 1 p.m. At 2 p.m., carefully curated selections of the surveillance footage were delivered to 3 recipients. Martin Geller, CEO of Pinnacle PR, where Tessa worked as a reputation management director. The package focused on her cocaine use, her discussions of using company time for her affairs, and her detailed plans to defraud me. Not ideal qualities for someone managing client reputations. Pastor Richard Simmons at Lakeside Community Church, where Tessa led the women's ministry and marriage preparation classes. His package included footage of Tessa mocking the desperate virgins in her program and using our home for what amounted to swinger parties. Vivian and Raymond Price, Tessa's parents, who had welcomed me into their family and who believed their daughter was in a loving, committed marriage. They received only a single video, Tessa explaining to a friend that she'd never loved me but had married me because I was stable, employable, and easy to manage. By Monday morning, Tessa was unemployed. Pinnacle PR couldn't afford the liability of an executive with documented ethical violations. By Wednesday, she'd been asked to step down from all church activities. By the following weekend, according to mutual friends, her parents had refused to let her stay with them, horrified by what they'd learned. Jason, it turned out, was also married. His wife received her own package. He moved out of state within a month. The divorce proceedings were remarkably straightforward. With evidence of financial misconduct, attempt to defraud, and misuse of marital assets, Tessa's claims fell apart. There was no alimony. The house remained mine. The retirement accounts remained untouched. She was even ordered to repay the money she'd taken from our joint accounts. I heard through mutual connections that she ended up moving to her sister's place in Nevada, waitressing at a casino and telling anyone who would listen that I was a controlling psychopath who had driven her to cheat. Few believed her. The evidence was too clear, too damning, too comprehensive. I never spoke to her again. It's been 18 months since that night. My new life has taken shape gradually, like a Polaroid developing. The house sold quickly, and I used the proceeds to buy a smaller place closer to the hospital. No sense in commuting when you work the hours I do. I switched to the day shift finally, watching sunrises instead of missing them. I adopted a retired greyhound named Miles, who doesn't care about my schedule as long as he gets his walks and his spot on the couch. Sometimes, I think about who I was before. The trusting husband who worked himself to exhaustion while his wife made a mockery of their marriage. Other times, I think about who I became. The silent watcher, meticulously documenting betrayal from the shadows. Neither version seems quite right anymore. Last week, I had coffee with Jamie, of all people. She reached out through a mutual friend, wanting to apologize for her part in the situation, however peripheral. She didn't try to defend Tessa or minimize what had happened. She just said she wished she'd had the courage to tell me herself. "I was impressed by how you handled it," she admitted. "No screaming, no violence, just consequences." "The ER teaches you to respond, not react," I said. "Emotions cloud judgment." Still, it was, I don't know, dignified, I guess. We talked about other things after that. Her new job, my new dog, the book she's writing, the night shift finally being behind me. It was nice, normal in a way my life hadn't felt in years. As for Tessa, I heard she tried to re-establish herself in PR in Nevada, but the industry is small and reputations matter. Last I heard, she was still waitressing, living paycheck to paycheck in her sister's spare room. Jason apparently lost his medical license after his own misconduct came to light through the divorce proceedings with his wife. They deserved each other, really. Do I regret how things played out? Sometimes I regret that it was necessary. I regret the years wasted with someone who saw me as nothing but a convenience. I regret not seeing the truth sooner. But the quiet victory of reclaiming my life, the peace of a home that's truly mine, the knowledge that justice was served through truth rather than violence or drama, those things I don't regret at all. Sometimes the silent ones hit the hardest. Sometimes watching and waiting yields the most complete victory. Sometimes the most devastating weapon isn't shouting or fighting, it's simply revealing the truth, without embellishment or emotional clouding. "Enjoy the show, darling," I told her that night. And in the end, it was quite a show indeed. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.